UFC 309 just wrapped up, and a lot of things have changed. A lot of opinions have changed. There's been a ton of narrative shifts. And starting with the co-main event, because I feel like that's the main event, the real main event, the fight that people care about. The first narrative shift. Michael Chandler is the dirtiest fighter in the UFC by far. Maybe even more dirty than Jon Jones. He was able to out-dirty Jon Jones. It was crazy, and Dustin Poirier was proven right. This guy was doing the fish hooks, back of the head shots. And we learned that Michael Peterson should be in federal prison, one of the worst referees. Again, Mark Goddard was on the card, and Keith Peterson did worse than him, did worse. It was a pathetic showing. He literally was squatting down, looking straight at the back of the headshots, and did nothing. Michael Chandler grabbed the cage like 2-3 times, stopped multiple takedowns. It didn't matter. Charles Oliveira pushes through anyway. Eye pokes, everything. He cheats in like 4 or 5 different ways. It's crazy. At least Jon Jones, he just takes PEDs, which, by the way, Michael Chandler is 100% on EPO. No doubt about it. He gasses out in every fight, and then for his first 5-rounder in the UFC, perfect cardio. As soon as USADA leaves. But yeah, that is one of the biggest things, one of the biggest narrative shifts. People knew that Michael Chandler cheated. Now they really know. So that was a big one. The other thing with Charles Oliveira is we learned there was a lot of people saying Charles Oliveira has a wrestling problem. And I was one of those people, and we weren't wrong to say that. He was getting out-wrestled by Islam, by Arman. He got dominated in the wrestling against Arman. And in this fight, he proved that he worked on it, and he did what we all want him to do. He's an elite grappler, shoot takedowns. He clearly improved his grappling after that Arman fight, his wrestling, and it showed to take down a guy like Michael Chandler at will for basically 5 rounds whenever he wanted. Michael Chandler had a very difficult time stuffing takedowns. It wasn't until the later rounds where he was stuffing takedowns. And even then, he was getting taken down, controlled, his back taken, almost submitted, getting ground and pounded. I mean, just crazy. We definitely learned that Charles Oliveira has improved. His striking defense is better. He still doesn't move his head. Straight shots are the way to go against Oliveira. His cardio looked pretty good. He looked a little gassed, but he said that he was injured. He didn't really have a proper training camp against a guy like Michael Chandler. Very impressive. We also learned somehow, I get Michael Chandler, he was out for 2 years. Maybe he let his chin heal. He stopped taking damage. Same with Oliveira. He doesn't fight as much as he used to. These guys were known for being kind of chinny. Michael Chandler, Oliveira, both guys have been knocked out before, and they get dropped in almost every one of their fights, even though Oliveira still has not been dropped since Islam Makhachev, since that fight, and that was over 2 years ago. He didn't get dropped versus Dariush, didn't get dropped versus Arman, and he didn't get dropped with 5 rounds against Chandler. He got hurt, but he didn't get dropped. Michael Chandler didn't get dropped either. The second round, that was more of a slip. He got hurt, but he didn't get dropped. And these guys are known for being chinny. And all of a sudden, they just develop granite chins. Honestly, I think that these guys have better chins than people make it out to be. Michael Chandler, he didn't get finished versus Gaethje. He didn't get finished he did, but he got submitted against Poirier. He was able to survive, even though they got dropped. They were able to survive, able to push through. They both showed a ton of heart. Michael Chandler survived against Tony Ferguson. He survived against Dan Hooker. Didn't get dropped against Dan Hooker. And he's a really good fighter. I'm, blanking on who else he fought. But still, Charles Oliveira didn't get dropped for Dariush. He's powerful. Didn't get dropped. Arman is powerful. Didn't get dropped. These guys have much improved chins. They're not really chinny anymore. I think that both of their striking defenses have improved. But moving on. Outside of that fight, what have we learned? Joe Rogan is the worst commentator in the UFC. I'd rather listen to Michael Bisping. And we knew this. We knew that Joe Rogan, he doesn't really keep up with the sport. He basically only shows up for the big fights. He glazes Adesanya, glazes Jon Jones. It's hard to listen to. It's really hard. I don't like the way he speaks either. like just the way he like just pronounces things, I just don't really like listening to him. The way he looks at Jon Jones, it's so weird. He calls Adesanya style bender. It's so cringy. During the Oliveira fight, he was saying, because DC said, oh, those are to the back of the head. And Joe Rogan was trying to say that those are all to the side of the head. Just crazy. One of the worst announcers. Horrible to listen to. But moving on for the main event, we didn't really learn much. We learned that Stipe the Sloth, he's even slower. He had no business being in the octagon. We learned that Stipe Miocic probably loses to everyone in the top 10 at heavyweight. He loses to Cyril Gane, loses to Volkov. He loses to Pavlovich, loses to Aspinall. Pereira, I get he's a light heavyweight, but still, he loses to all of these guys. He loses to Tybura, maybe. Spivak, he loses to Spivak. There's a lot of guys he loses. He loses to Almeida. He loses to all of them. He had no business being in the octagon. And he did better than we thought, but he looked worse than we thought. Jon Jones, we learned that he's not washed. He still has very fast kicks, and he still has a boxing problem. Didn't really learn much from Jon Jones other than he's going to get flatlined against Tom Aspinall. But yeah, we didn't really learn much. Lighter man skill wins again. And we learned that Bo Nickal, I said in my last video, so I know he's not ready for the top 15. I know that for sure. He even said that. Bo Nickal is underrated. I don't care. I think I'm the only fan left. I like Bo Nickal. He's a nice guy. Yes, he's boring. He's just a good lad, you know? Bo Nickal, he's only, 7 fights in his MMA career. Didn't shoot a takedown, and he's a wrestler. So his striking, he's only been striking for 7 fights, and he outstruck Paul Craig. And there wasn't really a takedown threat. And he did good. Paul Craig is decent on the feet. He's not a great striker. I thought, yes, it was a boring performance, but he did good. His striking looked decent. He was landing some good body shots. But the narrative shift is that he's not going to be a future champion. I didn't realize. I thought he was 26. He's 28 or 27. So he's a little bit older. I don't think he's going to be a future champ. I think his ceiling... People were saying his ceiling is future champ, maybe top 5. His ceiling may be top 10. With the right matchups, it could be top 5. Got to remember, Marvin Vettori. Bo Nickal is underrated. Marvin Vettori was a top 4 fighter at one point, getting title shots. You know, middleweight is not a very skilled division. It's getting better. But yeah, that's the narrative shift. His stock definitely dropped from that performance. And we learned Karine Silva, Jonathan Martinez, never picking them again. Negative fight IQ. Jonathan Martinez needs to be cut from the UFC. His stock dropped. He's out of the rankings. And he's the new Ricky Simone. He was once ranked, had a big matchup, did terrible, and then he's going to go on a losing streak. I don't think he beat Saeed either. I think that he's going to go on a little bit of a losing streak. Maybe he fights Vinicius Oliveira. I'd like to see that fight. Easy win for Oliveira. Maybe. It depends what Martinez shows up. Karine Silva, she was the better fighter, arguably won, but she lost the fight. She just fought so stupidly, kept on going for takedowns when she was doing so good on the feet. Yeah, she has all the talent, but just doesn't have the IQ. These two people, single-digit IQ. And we learned that Marcin Tybura, he still got it. Crafty vet performance. I picked him to win. I knew he was going to win. And he showed he's still a good grappler. You know, good comeback performance. A lot of these guys, Denise, I forgot the other 6'7" guy who just got fraud checked. The guys at heavyweight that don't have grappling, they can succeed, but they can only succeed so far. They have to get the right matchups. Viviani, she still got it, 37. Like I said, I picked Karine, but I said Viviani is still good. She's still a good, I think, ranked fighter. Her losses were good losses, and she looked good in her losses, and she got a good win. Jim Miller, he still got it. He's 41. And he showed he still has a few fights left in him. With the right matchups, don't give him a ranked opponent. Give him easier competitive fights. But that's what we learned. Those are the narrative shifts, the pretty big ones. For stocks, I feel like Jon Jones's stock, it rose a tiny bit. Not really. Stipe, he retired, thank God. Michael Chandler, his stock was going to take a massive dip until the 5th round. If he got controlled for the 5th round, he may have had to retire after that, but maybe he gets a big matchup. Oliveira, the best version, Charles Oliveira 3.0. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know who you want to see Oliveira fight next, who you have in Aspinall versus Jones. And yeah, that is it for me. Let me know what you think. And yeah.